I normally don't write speeches, statements, none of that. I just come off the cuff, raw and uncut. But I consulted a number of leaders in the Black liberation movement around the country that I respect because we had a critical juncture in human history. Franz Fanon once said, in The Wretch of the Earth, each generation out of relative obscurity must discover its mission, fulfill it or betray it. Right now, our mission is to stop the Democratic Party war machine that's leading to a World War III situation, is to stop a civil war that Donald Trump wants to initiate, us to stop all these genocides around the world. I'm Kwame Chase Shakur, one of the senior advisors for Green Party presidential candidate Dr. Jill Stein and also the chairman of the Black Liberation Party. I come before the public today to respond to Barack Obama's latest remarks chastising black men for not voting for Kamala Harris. July 3rd, 1967, Huey P. Newton, the co-founder of the Black Panther Party, wrote in an essay titled In Defense of SelfDefense, in which he stated in part, quote, "The oppressor, the endorsed spokesman, and the implacables form the 3 points of a triangle of death. The oppressor looks upon the endorsed spokesman as a tool to use against the implacable to keep the masses passive within the acceptable limits of the tactics he is capable of containing. The endorsed spokesman look upon the oppressor as a guardian angel who can always be depended upon to protect them from the wrath of the implacables, while he looks upon the implacable as a dangerous and irresponsible madman who by angering the oppressor will certainly provoke a bloodbath in which they themselves might get washed away. The implacable view both the oppressors and the endorsed leaders as his deadly enemies. If anything, he has a more profound hatred for the endorsed leaders than he has for the oppressor himself, because the implacables know that they can deal with the oppressor only after they have driven the endorsed spokesman off the scene," unquote. As I sat in a prison cell during your tenure in the white supremacist house, I watched you from afar, Barack Obama, as you served as the endorsed spokesman and the professional representative of U.S. imperialism. If I read your autobiography, Dreams from My Father and The Audacity, Hope, to understand what type of president you would be before you were even elected president of the empire. I watched as our people celebrated your ascension to power. And if I hadn't read countless books and gave myself a world-class education, I might have actually voted for you out of ignorance. So I understand how you dupe many people in our community. By this time in my life, I was educated and understood what role you would play as the 44th president of the United States. Everything you did during your tenure, I had already expected. I'm sure the oppressor, the imperialist class, the 1% is certainly appreciative to you in regards to how well you maintain the helm of U.S. imperialism, empire, colonialism, neo-colonialism, domestically and abroad. I'm one of those black men voters that actually paid attention, not to what you eloquently said to dupe us, but your actual policies that you carried out that harm many black people, many African people, many black men voters like myself. So I would like to enumerate some of those policies, if I may. At the top of my list is the fact that under your presidency, we have African slavery that exists in Libya today due to you overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi and assassinating one of the most outspoken African leaders who stood up to U.S. imperialism. You are someone who has spoken about the reprehensible history of chattel slavery here in the United States. However, it's ironic that you are absolutely silent about the slavery that exists in Libya due to your foreign policies in relationship to the African continent. But I'm not surprised. It was under your administration that AFRICOM expanded to reinforce U.S. imperialist domination and subjugation of Africa for Western interests. It was under your administration that the genocide continued in Congo and continues today. You have never been a friend or an ally to the African continent. That is a microcosm of your foreign policy in regards to black, brown, and indigenous people domestically and abroad. In the Middle East, you were a big supporter of the Zionist settler colonial state of Israel. It was under your administration that you signed a 10-year memorandum of understanding that would give Israel over $40 billion in aid, largely military aid. The ongoing genocide that has been waged against the Palestinians since the first Nakba, you have only aided and assisted in that ongoing genocide. Barack Obama, I ask you, whenever in the black liberation movement and tradition have black leaders like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, Huey P. Newton, Fred Hampton, W. Du Bois, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Assata Shakur, etc., have we supported settler colonial states, apartheid states. It was settler colonial states like Israel who supported apartheid South Africa. For you to have the nerve to chastise black men for not voting for Kamala Harris on your bully pulpit to the world is the ultimate treason to our community. If Malcolm X and Huey P. Newton, Kwame Ture, James Baldwin were alive today, they would collectively call you out for your support for genocide and Zionist apartheid in Palestine. Black men voters like myself aren't voting for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump because we honor our ancestors' wisdom and the positions that they held in their own lifetime in regards to Palestine. Furthermore, voting for Kamala Harris because she's a black woman has nothing to do with being on the right side of history. If supporting a black woman is being on the right side of history, did Assata Shakur, being black and a woman, stop the bounty on her head being raised from $1 million to $2 million in 2013 when you were the president? Did her being a black woman make you stand up for her when she was being labeled a terrorist by your imperialist slave masters? Of course not. You approved doubling of the bounty on her head, so you don't want us to support black women. You want us to support black imperialist women, and we won't. It's funny to me that the Democrats like you call Donald Trump a fascist and a threat to democracy, when if I remember correctly, it was under your administration that the fascist police state was expanded. It was you who upheld the Patriot Act. It was you who reinforced Homeland Security's reach in the United States and wrote in civil liberties. It was you who expanded the militarization of the police in the U.S. with 1033 program, which permitted the Department of Defense to give military equipment to local police around the country. You may argue that your Executive Order 13688 was intended to limit the transfer of military equipment to local police, but the actual practice speaks to a different reality that was responsible for many black, brown, and indigenous people being killed and shot down in the streets. Black men were overwhelmingly affected by your policy that never ended this practice in the United States. The American Civil Liberties Union wrote a report about this May 12th, 2021, in which they held that, quote, while it is difficult to trace individual pieces of 1033 equipment to deployment by law enforcement, we can identify moments where 1033 is implicated in troubling police violence. Take the protests of June 2020, which began in response to the police murder of George Floyd and sought to address systematic racism and violence in policing. During those protests in Austin, Texas, police critically injured a 20-year-old black man protesting using less lethal weapons. At the time, they had in their possession 5 less lethal firing devices transferred through 1033. Executive Order 13688 failed to curb these racist abuses. The amount of dangerous equipment in circulation remains high. Furthermore, this influx of equipment does not improve public safety. The 1033 program is beyond reform and must end for good, unquote. Obama and Kamala Harris cannot escape their responsibility to speak to the issues like the mass incarcerations, arrests, killings of black men who appear to be the primary target of such U.S. oppression. Obama's statements, however, seek to blame black men for black men's apparent lack of support for Kamala Harris instead of blaming the Democratic Party failure to speak to the issues that affect black men in particular and black people in general and do something tangibly to address those issues. If Kamala Harris spoke to those issues that directly affect black people and black men in particular and doing so with real actions, black people will come out of the woodwork to support that kind of Harris agenda. Nonetheless, that's not the case. There is no reason for the Democratic Party to expect black people, men or women, to support the Democratic Party, despite the fact that the Democratic Party does not offer black people anything in terms of addressing specific features of our oppression. Hillary Clinton blamed her loss on the Russians, similar to Obama's attempt to blame the lack of support for Harris on black men. The Biden administration just put the Yahoo 3 on trial based on some conspiracy with Russians to undermine the U.S. government. The Democratic Party are experts in manufacturing straw men to blame their failures on. Russians nor black men represent the primary contradiction confronting the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party's primary contradiction is the unwillingness of the Democratic Party and its leadership to speak to the U.S. government's killing, brutalizing, and imprisoning black people and doing something about it, while expecting black people to enthusiastically support the Democratic Party. We say those days are long gone. In summation, we in the Black Liberation Movement think the black men's leadership class is a class that has been bought and paid for by the corporate duopoly ever since they sold us out to the Democratic Party in the National Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana in 1972. Their hold on to our community has only served to maintain our colonial subjugation within the United States and has attached our community to imperialist policies around the world that has led to us tacitly supporting genocide, plunder, and destabilization to other black, brown, and indigenous people globally. We say never again. In our name, Barack Obama and Kamala Harris, it is time that we take our power back from the black men's leadership and stand on the right side of history with the people of the world. We place our moral compass and humanity before our allegiance to the party that has always betrayed black people. As a black man who's voted for the first time in my life, I won't be voting for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. I will be standing with the grassroots and voting for Dr. Jill Stein. All power to the people, boots on the ground, and I approve of this message.